talk, and then we'll take questions. Raise your hand, come around the room, and call people for us.
First of all, we're going to play a really good Ohio Bobcat football team. Coach Albin is the new head coach there. He's been the offensive coordinator for a very, very long time. I just want to make sure I do give respect to Frank Solich, who was a heck of a coach, and we're going to miss him dearly in the coaching profession. I hope he's around. I hope he's at the convention because the man is a walking book of knowledge, and he was really good for the game, and I wish him all the best, and I wish the best of luck to Coach Albin, but hopefully not this week. Questions?
Questions? Want to raise those hands? We'll start with Chris and then go to Mark.
Dino, is there any skill or improvement that Tommy's shown in training camp that makes you think this is an improved player that we're going to have this year, or do you just have to sort of wait and see when the lights go on if the results are better?
I think he has improved his skills. I think Coach Gilbert has done some really good things with him. We hope that those things that we see in practice transfer to the game and we get a new and improved and a better version of someone who we think is really good.
Can I ask you what he's improved on, whether it's decision-making, throwing on the run, whatever?
I think the big thing is just his pocket presence, knowing where people are, getting rid of the ball so he can protect himself more in situations when things break down.
Coach, you've been on both sides of a game like this, where you're the smaller school with a big upset and vice versa. How do you see a game like this for your team in the position you're in?
You know, it's very interesting. I was just sitting back and reflecting a little bit before I walked in here, and I have been on both sides of this. Ohio will play this like a bowl game. That would be my approach to it. It could be a huge win, a huge feather for the start of Coach Albin and his program. But he's also got things that, that he's done in the past that he's probably going to do. But I'd imagine they'd be wide open, and if they get an opportunity to take some chances, they'll take those chances for the win.
And so for your team, how do you see it? Is it a no-win situation almost? Or?
Well, every game you have an opportunity to win. We hope we have an opportunity to win as well. But we need to go out there and we need to play loose and we need to play our football. That's a good football team. That's why they're favored. They're playing at home. But, favorite teams have lost before. And we have to go out there and play a strong, strong game with no turnovers and be fantastic in the kicking game.
Stephen and Christian?
I wanted to ask about your offensive line. What can you tell us about Leitch, Davis, and Bergeron? And then, more broadly speaking, how confident are you in that group now that the time is kind of come?
I'm not going to talk about who's in and who's out, but I'm very confident in that group. I think that the situation is a lot different than the first game last year, and I'm more comfortable with it. We have guys that have been in and out of camp. We haven't lost anybody for the season, and I think that's an extremely positive thing.
Anything on Kalon Ellis you can pass along what he's done to at least put himself in a position to maybe contribute?
He's a good player. He's picked up things very quickly. That's why he's sitting where he is in the depth chart, and he's going to be someone that's going to contribute down the road.
Christian? Coach, you've got Deuce Chestnut starting as the opposite cornerback to Garrett Williams. What have you seen from him in training camp that's allowed him to get to this spot? A
lot of plays. The guy he came in early, started making interceptions. He was physical in the scrimmages that we played. He's going to be a good player. Now, he doesn't have the experience, and now he's got to go through some of that stuff that the guys went through last year. But he's got the physical tools to be a very, very good player.
When you see Deuce taking leads from guys like Andre, Trill, and Iffy, guys who have been drafted in the NFL, what does that say to you about the recruiting at that position, that you've got a talented freshman who can step in day one?
Well, I think the biggest thing is the evaluation process is working, but when you get someone here, they still have to continue to develop. Those three names you threw out there, they didn't come in here that way. I mean, Andre Cisco, nobody wanted him. I mean, he had to go down to IMG. He didn't get a scholarship. He just went down there by himself. But when you met him at IMG and you saw the way he worked at IMG and then you saw the way that he worked when he came up here, he was not going to be denied. I think one of the statistics that always jumps out at me is that every Super Bowl they talk to you about how many 5 and 4 stars are in the Super Bowl. And then they add up the 0, 1, and 2, and 3 stars and they blow you through the roof. Just because you're at a certain ability and a certain level at a certain age doesn't mean you continue to develop, progress, and mature, where you're really focused on your mind, not only what you want to do mentally, but you make sure that your body physically follows along with your goal. And I think that's one of the things that Cisco did that was amazing. So when you talk about those three individuals, recruiting and evaluations are important, but there's some guys are sometimes they're made of different stuff than other people. That allows them to achieve things that maybe other people would not achieve.
Thanks, Coach.
Nate?
I'm going to ask about another New Jersey guy, Taj. When you look at him stature-wise, it almost belies the fact that he is so difficult to bring down. When you watch him play, he breaks a lot of tackles out there. Did that show up on tape down in Palmyra, or is that something you discovered you could do when he was finally on the field?
Taj was a quarterback that ran the ball a lot. I think he dropped back to pass, but he ended up running a lot. And you could see that he had the ability to make people miss, and he was very, very courageous, even though he didn't have the biggest stature in the world. When you look at him, we have put weight on him. He does look different than when he came in here as a freshman, so he has gotten bigger. But he hasn't lost that edge about him. I mean, he runs over the middle. He runs the ball like a tailback. Every time he touches the ball, it's like it's his last carry. Sometimes that's really, really good. Sometimes that's not so good. But in the long run, you bet on Taj. He's going to find a way to be explosive and make plays for you in a game.
Tom?
Coach, seeing Chris Elmore there on the depth chart at tight end, he's been a bit of everything for you. What's it like kind of having that type of utility player where you find yourself in a situation where he can perform at different spots?
It's a huge advantage. Chris should be, when he's done playing football, he should be a coach. He's got so much knowledge at so many different positions. He gets along with everybody. He's one of the team leaders, but he really does have that type of knowledge. When he asks you a question, you need to answer his question, and his question is normally a good one. There's no bad ones, but when you're coaching Chris Elmore, they're normally all good questions. And there's certain things he needs to know to be the player that he's going to be, and we give him the answers. And if we don't have them, we go find them. But he's an exciting player, very, very sharp mentally. He makes very, very little mental mistakes, and then we all know how physical he is.
Coach, you mentioned that you have a lot of confidence in the offensive line. How does new offensive line coach Mike Schmidt kind of contribute to that?
He brings a certain swagger. There's certain things that he believes in. It's a little bit different than some of the other people that have been here. We've had to adjust a little bit for that, but I think that's going to pay off in the long run, and that's why we went out there to get him. It was a very, very competitive pool that he was in, and there were some other guys that have done a fantastic job in that pool, because I keep track of those guys just in case something happens down the road. But Mike's done an amazing job, and I'm looking forward to see how it looks on the football field.
I don't know if you can share specifics, but what in particular has he brought to the table in terms of both spring training and training camp?
I just think there's a certain toughness about that group. Maybe they're a little bit tougher than they were before.
Hey, Coach. Ohio only had 3 games last year, but a pretty prolific rushing attack nonetheless. What have you seen on film about their run game that impresses you the most?
They remind me of old Nebraska without the option. I mean, their linemen are big, they're physical, they're veterans, they've all come back, they understand the scheme. There's no hesitation when they're going somewhere. Their running back is a north and south downhill runner that puts his foot in the ground and he carries people. I mean, I believe one year he averaged like 6.8, the next year he averaged 6.2. And when you watch him, there's not a lot of wasted movement with him. He sees a crack, he goes, hits it. It's old school football, and I can appreciate that.
Coach, in naming Ben LaBrosse the starting free safety, what did you see out of him, out of the competition that led him away from Jason Simmons?
Okay, now I give it to me one more time, because it was behind the mask. It was a little difficult.
Okay. What did you see in separation between Ben LaBrosse and Jason Simmons?
I'm not going to talk about that in the particular. I think that both of those guys are good players, and I think they're both going to play before this is all said and done. But somebody's got to run out there first, and I think that both of those guys will be in a game enough that they'll be able to prove what they want to do on and off the football field and whether it's going to stay that way or not. But Ben has done some amazing things, and so has Jason.
Coach, I know you've said many times last year was last year, and so we know that. But given that, can you talk about the first game of the season, the importance as a tone setter for this year, and kind of to get you going the other way?
it's the first game of the season. It counts as one win. We're going down there, and hopefully we can start off 1-0. I think it's like any other season. It's a brand new slate. You get to start painting your portrait, so to speak, and how it's going to look when it's all said and done. Difficult opponent, more difficult than most likely you would want, but obviously. But, you know, we're going to go down there and give it our best and see how we do. It's a fine crew with a great culture down there, and you're playing at their place, which makes it difficult. So I understand why we are sitting in the situation that we are with everyone else. But we'll go down there and we'll see.
Here, Brad.
Yeah, Coach, obviously looking at the special teams unit, placing a punter again, what have you seen from that position from the two freshmen competing for the job?
We got to wait and see. I mean, you know, James is going to go out there, and there's nothing spookier than a freshman in his first game. I mean, punter. A punter or a place kicker, it's spooky because you get to see, those guys are just different. That's why they call them specialists. They're just different. But I can think back to some young kicker that didn't have a scholarship that went out his first game. I'm not sure if he missed his first kick or not, but I know he didn't miss a lot of them because halfway through the season he went from being a walk-on to getting a scholarship, and they gave him some trophy at the end of the year. So we expect big things from James, and it's going to be a little spooky at first, but let's see if he can get through those growing pains and kick the ball the way we know he can kick the ball, because that's the reason why we brought him here.
Brent and Steven.
Coach, have you found through the years there is a common message your team needs in the first game because there's so many unknowns, like you said, spooky freshmen? Is there a common message you can give a team before they kick off?
I think that the young guys are going to be nervous. Guys that haven't played, they're going to be nervous. You can't get around it. But then there's guys that have played a lot of football, and in talking to both the coordinators, you really want to start the game with, you know, guys that have played. You know what I mean? You don't want to hand the ball to somebody that hasn't had a handoff before. You know, you would like to avoid your quarterback's first pass being in a game like that, but eventually everybody's got to throw their first pass. We don't have that situation with our quarterbacks. But if you start with the guys that have been around, I think that normally gives you the starting point that you want. But everybody's got to take their first hit. Everybody's got to have their first ball thrown at them. And that's just football. And I don't think we have as many guys as we had last year in that situation, but we have some guys.
Anything you can share on how McKinley's doing, whether he might play, and if he's not there, what have you seen from that group and Curtis as far as stopping that?
When it comes to him, it's a medical thing. Okay, so we have to get clearance from the medical thing. When he gets cleared, okay, he'll be with us. It could be today, it could be tomorrow. We don't play today, and we don't practice today. But when he gets cleared, he'll be with us. And I think that group has done an outstanding job. It's been really good in in fall ball. And when he comes back, I think they'll be even better.
Coach, in terms of Rob Hanna at Rover, what have you seen? What kinds of improvements have you seen from him in the off season? Where have you kind of seen him step up his game?
Bigger, stronger, more confident. You know, I mean, he was a very, very young player in a very, very big role last year. And I think that all those games of experience, I'm not going to say he's settled down yet, but he's got to be feeling a lot better than he was last year when we threw him out there the first time and there was no fans in the stands.
Chris?
You know, how big a deal is in terms of like conditioning is the missed time for McKinley and Dakota? They're big guys. I don't know how quickly they can sort of go in and out of shape.
Well, again, I go back to last year when Dakota didn't go the whole season, and he went the last 3 weeks and he played the entire Notre Dame game, and the rushing started to look different. I think he only came in 2 weeks before that, if I'm right. If my memory serves me right. So with those guys, there's things you can do to get them in shape. And then you got to remember, well, from a defensive standpoint, those guys don't take all the doggone reps anyway. They kind of rotate. But from an offensive line thing, it's big. But we've been doing some special stuff with him.
Hey, you know, when you think about your time as a coach and starting on the road, starting the season on the road versus starting at home, are there any advantages or, for that matter, disadvantages to either of those options?
You know, I think it's about the same. I think if you go on the road, you know, it's a us against them mentality. You know, everybody's against you. Can you get your guys fired up? And I think you can be a little bit more focused on the road. You don't have all the parents and the tickets and the students and everything else telling you in class that they're so excited about the game that's coming up this weekend. So you kind of lock in. It's more of a family atmosphere on the road. Now, that being said, it's really a 50-50, because if I had an opportunity to start in the Dome this year, yeah. You know, but that's okay. We'll play this game and we'll get an opportunity to come back from the Dome for a long time.
Tommy, then Mark.
How do you usually sleep week one?
What did he just say to me? I really didn't hear you, Tommy. What did you say?
How do you usually sleep week one? You get good sleep week one?
Tommy, I don't sleep at all. I don't sleep week 1, 9, 12, 13. I don't sleep. I get sleep wherever I can. Bus, car, plane. I don't sleep. And I'm not trying to avoid the question. I'm actually answering the question. My sleep habits are terrible. You don't want them. Trust me.
Coach, you've been through a lot of training camps, and I don't know if you, when you get to the end of it and you go into a season, if you have any different confidence level in one team or the next, considering how training camp went. Do you have a sense as to what kind of team you have and what this is going to be like?
I'm so excited you asked this one, because I was really thinking about this earlier, just in there. And starting the season with any football team, here's the analogy. It's going to be an analogy, okay? It's like when you have a son or a daughter and you taken the training wheels off the bike and they're about to ride the bike without the training wheels on the first time. Now, you know they're going to eventually end up riding the bike, but you don't want to push them and then they crash on their first ride, and then it's going to take forever for them to get back up on there. And it's kind of a little bit like that. You have a lot of confidence. You have a lot of faith. They've had the training wheels on a long time. They should stay up. Most do, some don't. That doesn't mean they're not going to be successful later. But you just kind of wait and see. And then if they stay up, you're really excited. If they crash, you tell them it's not that bad, that they'll do better, and they will. And then they'll stay up and they ride. But it's a lot like that. That's a truism, too. I'm telling you the truth on that.
Got time for 2 more. We'll start with Christian.
Along those same lines, now that you've gotten this opportunity to see this team with a full training camp, full spring and fall ball, how much different is the preparation for this week 1 game than last year?
Oh, it's huge. It's totally different. This team right now would get after the team from last year, okay? Now, the team from last year had so many guys going in and out and had a really good secondary and all that kind of stuff, and we didn't get to play that long with them. But this team's got some stuff to it, okay? So if you're comparing the two, which we shouldn't, I would want this team. I wouldn't want the last year's team.
And then last one will come right here.
Hey, Coach, from Garrett Williams this year, do you expect him to be the anchor of the secondary?
Yes. Garrett Williams is really good. You can't get around it. Everybody notices it. If you can't see it, there's something wrong with you. He's a very, very good player. Okay?
All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Coach. Thank you, Coach.
Yeah.